A year and a half ago, I had the privilege of spending a full day with Marty Seligman. He invited me to his home, and we were sitting down in his beautiful rose garden, a rose garden that he writes about often, and sitting and talking about positive psychology, its past, its present, and more than anything, its future. We're talking about education, about what he was doing in his classes, what I was doing in my classes. And then, halfway through the conversation, he suddenly stopped and said, "Tal, you know what the problem is with psychology today? Not just with positive psychology, with psychology today." And I said, "What?" immediately taking out my notebook. And he said, "You know, the problem with psychology today is that our focus has mostly been neck up, whereas most of what happens to us is neck down." Our focus has been neck up, and most of what happens to us is neck down. Now, hearing this was very important for me. It was doubly important hearing it from Marty Seligman for various reasons. First of all, Marty Seligman has always been ahead of the game. He has, brought cognitive psychology into when it was hardly known, when behaviorism was done. And Marty Seligman also, the second thing, beyond him being a visionary and a very important psychologist, he was also one of the founders of cognitive psychology. I mean, what is cognitive therapy about? It's about neck up. And for him to say, we have been focusing too much on neck up and we need to go neck down, that means he thought about it a lot. That means he really studied this phenomenon and really understands that we need a serious shift here. And he is very right. And this is the topic of the next two lectures. In fact, what I'm going to offer you is a wonder drug. And this is only for students in 1504. Okay, the auditors as well. You can have that wonder drug too. And here is what the wonder drug is going to be doing for you. The wonder drug is going to make you feel good, real good. Your self-esteem is going to increase significantly. You're going to be more confident about yourself, about who you are, about your place in the world, in social settings, on your own. You're just going to have higher levels of self-esteem. And we know self-esteem is associated with tons of good stuff, which we'll talk about 2 weeks from now. You're going to feel much calmer, much more centered. You're even going to get smarter taking that drug. It's remarkable. I mean, I know you're starting to get a little bit worried here. It's also going to make you more attractive. You're going to feel more attractive, and you're going to exude more attractiveness. Again, this drug has been tested time and again, and this is all research. This is not just whim. Here I'm selling you something real, something that actually works. And I should add that there are no negative side effects to this drug. On the contrary, there are tons of positive side effects that I didn't even mention here. More than that, you can rest assured it's legal. I know you were concerned here, but you can take it. You can take it, you can handle it. You don't need to worry about it. And if anyone comes to you and is concerned about how you've suddenly changed as a result of this drug, you can send them to me. And finally, I'm not going to charge you for it. I should charge you for it, but I'm not a good businessman, so I'm going to give it to you for free over the next 2 lessons. And here is the drug. In fact, it's not just a drug, it's a cocktail. It's a cocktail of drugs because they seem to work best in many situations. So here is the cocktail. I hope you're listening now because this is very important. The wonder drug. 30 minutes of physical exercise 4 times a week. Exercise, in many ways, is the unsung hero of psychological interventions. It helps on so many levels. John Ratey, mentioned him, Harvard Medical School professor, psychiatrist. In a way, exercise can be thought of as psychiatrist's dream treatment. It works on anxiety, on panic disorder, and on stress in general, which has a lot to do with depression. And it generates the release of neurotransmitters, norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine, that are very similar to our most important psychiatric medicines. Having a bout of exercise is like taking a little bit of Prozac and a little bit of Ritalin right where it is supposed to go. The exact right amount of it, the exact right location, and without side effects or with side effects, positive side effects, physical as well as mental and emotional side effects. What John Ratey is calling for in his wonderful, wonderful book, just came out recently in this January, what he calls for is an exercise revolution. And he backs up this call with a lot of scientific evidence of why it is so important. Let me share with you just one area that he talks about. He talks about all ages. He talks about kids, adults, as well as the elderly population. And it has positive effects for every age, from 0 to 120. Let me talk about a couple of studies and findings that were where exercise was implemented in schools. So there are a few schools that introduced physical exercise as an integral part of its curriculum. For example, and this has been replicated in a few schools, every morning 45 minutes of some form of exercise. Usually running, sometimes rowing, cycling, climbing. There's a school that actually in New Jersey that actually put a climbing wall where students exercised. But some form of aerobic exercise, sometimes intertwined with interval training, every morning before school, 45 minutes a day. Some of the schools had it later during the day, most of them in the mornings. Here are some of the results from some of these schools that actually introduced it. Obesity levels, not surprising, went down. For example, in Naperville, in Illinois, in the district there where physical exercise was introduced in school, which is, by the way, interesting because in most schools, just yesterday I gave a talk at Horace Mann, and the teachers told me that in many of the schools in New York, physical exercise is being taken out rather than more of it is introduced. Physical exercise and art, both taken out. Why? Because they have to get the grades. Neck up. And that's a pity, and they pay a price. So obesity in the school in Naperville, or in the district Naperville in Illinois, obesity levels went down from 30% to 3% among the students. That has repercussions not just for the students' lives there, that they're more comfortable, that they're happier. It has repercussions and consequences for the rest of their lives. They're much less susceptible and prone to the chronic illnesses, such as cancer, heart failure. It's a win-win on so many levels, much less susceptible to diabetics. So that's obesity. What they also find at Naperville is that the grades went up significantly. In fact, usually the US doesn't do very well when it comes to those international tests, math and science tests that they do. I think it's usually in 8th grade. Well, Naperville is an exception. They scored number 6 in the world in mathematics and number 1 in the world in science. Now, people argue, well, Naperville is an affluent neighborhood or district, and it's true. How about other places? Well, they introduced exercise in very poor areas, in inner cities. For example, in Titusville, Pennsylvania. where many people are way below, where the average is way below the average income for the state. When before they introduced exercise, school performance, they were significantly below state average, Pennsylvania's average. After introducing exercise within a year, they went up to 17% above state average, with the only change being that year introducing physical exercise. They've seen this in other schools, in other districts as well. And what they also saw in the same school, in Tittersville, that fist fights, for example, they noticed violence disappeared completely as a result of the exercise. What they found also in a school in Iowa, where they introduced physical exercise, disciplinary problems went down from 225 to 95 in 1 year. In another school in Kansas, also inner city, disciplinary problems went down by 67% after they introduced exercise. We're much less likely to be violent. It calms us. It brings us to our natural state of being, which is much calmer as opposed to being angry and upset. And people need to let out that steam. And unfortunately, very often that steam is let out in fights with aggression. And this is a much healthier way to divert that healthy energy.